One faithful Sunday, the wind howled outside, a furious, living thing that rattled the stained glass windows of the massive hall of Holy Ground Ministries. Inside, however, the air was thick with a different kind of energy. A desperate crowd, thousands strong, filled every wooden pew and stood shoulder to shoulder in the aisles. Rain lashed against the roof, but no one seemed to notice. All eyes were fixed on the raised pulpit, their necks craned in anticipation, waiting for a glimpse of her. Her name was Prophetess Patricia, but to the people gathered, she was more than that. She was Mama See-It-All. They had christened her with this title themselves, a testament to her supposed power. Some whispered that she could thread a needle through a person's soul, pulling out secrets no one else could ever know. Others swore she had a direct line to God, her voice a conduit for divine pronouncements. But today something was different. A current of unease, as cold as the morning rain, hung in the air. It was a silent tension, a collective held breath. Just then, a shrill, piercing scream shattered the silence. It didn't come from the front of the hall, but from a side entrance. A woman named Agatha, one of Mama See-It-All's trusted aides, burst through the crowd. Her eyes were wide with a manufactured frenzy, her body shaking with an exaggerated tremor. "She did it again," Agatha shrieked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Mama healed him. He can walk. Praise the Lord." The congregation erupted. Cheers and shouts of "Hallelujah" filled the hall, drowning out the storm. But in the sea of joyous faces, one woman remained still. Elizabeth, a quiet churchgoer who had been attending Holy Ground Ministries for months, watched from the back. A chill of suspicion, colder than the morning air, ran down her spine. She had a keen eye for detail, a silent habit she had developed long ago. And she had seen this very crippled man just 2 days prior, walking with a steady gait through the bustling market, carrying a heavy bag of yams. He hadn't been limping. He hadn't needed a wheelchair. Doubt, sharp and unforgiving, clawed at Elizabeth's heart. But who would believe her? Mama See-It-All was a force of nature, powerful and untouchable. Her followers were fiercely loyal, a human wall that would fight to protect their prophetess. To speak against her was to invite ruin. Elizabeth swallowed her questions, her heart heavy with a terrible secret. Years before, Prophetess Patricia had been a different person entirely. She was simply Patricia, a simple girl from a humble, God-fearing family. Her parents had raised her to be honest and devoted, to walk in the light and serve her community. In her small local church, Patricia was the brightest star. She led Sunday school with a gentle smile, organized prayer meetings with quiet efficiency, and her voice, a pure, soaring soprano, was the highlight of the choir. Everyone adored her. Some even whispered that she was destined for greatness, a vessel for divine purpose. No one could have ever predicted that her path would twist in such a dark direction. As an adult, Patricia struggled to build her own ministry. Her sermons were sincere, her intentions pure, but the crowds never came. Her small congregation dwindled, and her ambition, a hungry beast in her gut, began to fester. She saw other pastors, men and women who seemed to command power with a simple wave of the hand, and she felt a deep, burning envy. Desperate for a breakthrough, Patricia attended a grand conference for pastors. There, she met several famous preachers who seemed to hold a secret power, a charisma that was almost otherworldly. The leader, a man with cold, calculating eyes named Pastor Benji, singled her out from the crowd. He pulled her aside, his voice a low, dangerous whisper. "You are trying to be godly," he told her, his gaze piercing. "You have all the right words, all the sincerity in the world. But you will never make an impact until you are willing to make a sacrifice." He spoke of a special ceremony, an ancient rite that would require a significant offering from her. At first, Patricia hesitated. Her upbringing, her faith screamed in protest. But Pastor Benji was a master manipulator. He promised her the influence she desperately sought, the fame she craved. He painted a picture of a packed church, a global ministry, and a legacy that would stretch for generations. Driven by her desire to succeed, by the gnawing hunger of her ambition, she agreed. That night, in a secluded room, she participated in a strange, terrifying ritual. The other pastors gathered around her, their voices rising in a discordant chant. Patricia's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The offering she was asked to give was her chance to ever have children, the very essence of her future, her lineage, her family. A terrible, crushing weight settled in her chest as she made the trade. When the ritual was over, she felt a palpable shift. An invisible power, dark and heavy, settled around her like a cloak. She couldn't explain it, but she knew with chilling certainty that something had irrevocably changed within her. After returning from the conference, Patricia's fortune shifted dramatically. People started flocking to her services. Soon, the entire country had heard of Mama See It All. Her church began to fill with members from every corner of Nigeria and beyond. Her fame grew, and with it, her immense wealth. But this was only the beginning. Unbeknownst to her followers, Prophetess Patricia, the woman they worshipped as a holy vessel, was far more than just a deceitful prophetess. Beneath her human exterior lay an ancient, sinister secret. Patricia was a half-human, half-serpent, a hybrid of darkness whose origin traced back to a mysterious underwater covenant she had entered after joining the occult. Every midnight, she would disappear from her luxurious mansion, leaving the world of mortals behind. In the dead of night, she would shed her human form, her skin shimmering and her legs melding into a single scaled tail. This transformation marked her journey to the underwater kingdom where her true allegiance lay. She would slip silently into the river behind her mansion, vanishing beneath the waters as if swallowed by the very earth itself. There, in the murky depths, she joined her occultic brothers and sisters, other pastors and prophets who had pledged themselves to the marine kingdom. They shared twisted wisdom, dark strategies, and the skills needed to keep their congregations bound in deception. For Patricia, this was where she drew her power. The Marine Queen, a towering figure with serpentine features and glowing eyes, bestowed upon her strength, visions, and the ability to peer into the lives of her followers. But there was always a price. She had traded her soul, her humanity, and, most disturbingly, her womb for this authority. The sacrifice to the marine kingdom had left her barren, a trade she had willingly made to gain influence in the physical world. Back in her church, no one suspected a thing. To them, Patricia was a holy prophetess, and they were oblivious to her midnight disappearances. Her congregation continued to grow, as people flocked from far and wide, desperate for miracles, healing, and deliverance. Those who sought her favor were willing to pay any price, from cash offerings to livestock and even precious family heirlooms. Patricia's ministry had become a relentless machine, swallowing people's wealth and hopes alike. Within months, Prophetess Patricia began to implement strange new practices. Each member was handed a small, circular mirror, which she called the mirror of life. This mirror, she would say with a commanding tone, is blessed by the Almighty Himself. Every morning, look into it, speak to it, and you will see the part of your spirit that needs healing. Her congregants cherished these mirrors, believing they were on a path to spiritual growth. But in reality, the mirrors were sinister tools, connected directly to the marine world. Through them, Mama See It All could peer into her members' lives, studying their weaknesses, secrets, and fears. One Sunday, she called a young woman named Kemi to the front. "Last night," Patricia said with a slight, knowing smile, "you argued with your husband about his job, didn't you?" Kemi gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "How did you know?" The congregation erupted into a frenzy, marveling at Mama's ability to know the intimate details of their lives. In truth, Patricia had used her mirror the night before to summon Kemi's spirit, gathering all the information she needed to make the revelations sound divine. The church soon introduced holy water and miracle oil, bottled with simple labels but sold at exorbitant prices. Patricia would wave her hands over the items, claiming they could cure any sickness, fix any marriage, and bring financial blessings. Elizabeth watched as a struggling single mother gave her last savings for a tiny bottle of miracle oil. Elizabeth's fists clenched. Her suspicions deepened into a cold, hard certainty. She knew these were not blessings. They were lies. The next Sunday, a hush fell over the church as Prophetess Patricia's voice echoed through the hall. She scanned the congregation with piercing eyes, her gaze landing on a young man in the middle row. His name was Obiora, a quiet, newly returned graduate who had come from overseas with his mother to visit the church. They had heard of Mama See-It-All and her supposed divine revelations and thought it wise to seek a blessing. Patricia's face lit up with a predatory smile. "Young man, please come forward." Obiora hesitated, but his mother nudged him. "Go. This could be your blessing," she whispered, her eyes shining with hope. As Obiora stepped up to the front, Patricia raised her hand in what looked like a gesture of divine revelation. She took a deep breath and announced dramatically, "The Lord has revealed something troubling to me, my son." The congregation was silent, hanging on her every word. Patricia looked at Obiora with a heavy, mournful gaze, shaking her head slowly. "Young man, your life battery is running dangerously low. I see darkness ahead if nothing is done." Obiora's heart began to pound. Life battery? He didn't understand, but Patricia's grave expression sent a shiver of fear through him. "Mama, please, what does that mean?" Patricia placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch icy cold. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial whisper. "It means, my son, that if something isn't done quickly, you won't live to see your 30s. Marriage, children, all of that will be lost to you, unless you act now." Obiora's face turned pale. His mother gasped, clutching her chest in fear. But Patricia continued, her hands still raised as if to bestow hope. "The Lord has provided a solution. There is a way to renew your life battery, to ensure you live a long and prosperous life." She leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing with intense, calculating focus. "You must make a sacrifice, powerful seed, something that costs you deeply, for the Lord blesses those who give from the heart." Obiora's mother held him tight, her eyes wide with terror. "What kind of sacrifice, Mama?" she stammered. Patricia nodded as if she had expected the question. "The Lord has directed me," she said, her voice dropping to a hush, "that your son's life can be renewed with the sacrifice of a cow. Not just any cow, but one that symbolizes new life, strong, healthy, and without blemish." Obiora's mind reeled. He had heard of sacrifices before, but had never been asked to make one for himself. "Mama, I don't know where to get a cow now." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Do not worry, my son. The Lord understands. You need not go out and find a cow yourself. You can simply convert this sacrifice into a seed. Give the amount, and I will take care of the rest. The church has a way to handle these things. You just need to be obedient and trust in the word of the Lord." Obiora's mother whispered frantically in his ear, urging him to comply. "Obiora, don't delay. Just do what Mama See-It-All says. Your life is worth more than any amount of money." Reluctantly, he agreed, pulling out his checkbook and writing a large sum. Patricia accepted the check with a smile of satisfaction. "My son, your obedience has pleased the Lord. Your life is now in God's hands, and He will reward you for your sacrifice." Relieved but still shaken, Obiora returned to his seat, his mother clinging to him and thanking the prophetess profusely. But what he didn't know was that Patricia had no intention of buying any cow. As she did with many others, she took the money straight to her ongoing project fund, adding it to the luxurious mansion she was constructing on the outskirts of town. This was not the first time she had used fear tactics to squeeze offerings from her congregation, and it wouldn't be the last. Elizabeth watched from a distance as she gathered more stories like this. She saw the pattern, a calculated web of lies designed to drain her followers financially. She began to find a means to expose her evil doings, even though she knew it wouldn't be easy. She prayed that her efforts would one day set people like Obiora free, opening their eyes to the truth about Patricia's schemes. Elizabeth's resolve strengthened, fueled by her desire to protect innocent lives from falling into the same trap. Despite her growing doubts, Elizabeth kept attending the church, quietly observing every detail. She had to be sure. Her investigation was a solitary burden, a quiet rebellion against the powerful facade of Holy Ground Ministries. Then, one service, she noticed something she couldn't ignore. An elderly man in a wheelchair was wheeled up to the altar. Mama Seidal placed her hand on his forehead, murmuring a prayer. The man suddenly stood up, shaking with supposed new strength, while the congregation erupted in joyous shouts. Elizabeth, however, recognized him. He wasn't disabled at all. He was an actor paid to pretend for this miracle. She had seen him 2 weeks ago, laughing with the church's event coordinator outside a local cafe. Over time, Patricia had become one of the wealthiest women in the area, with a mansion filled with gold-plated furniture, expensive cars, and a personal staff. She called it a reward from God. But Elizabeth knew that no such blessing had arrived for her poor neighbors, who continued to give until they had nothing left. Amid all her schemes, Patricia wielded her power not only to deceive but to control lives, even breaking up families for her own selfish desires. She took a particular interest in wealthy, influential men who attended her church, especially those she sensed could be easily manipulated. If she set her sights on a married man, she would concoct visions and divine revelations that cast doubt upon his wife, creating chaos in the household. During one particularly scandalous service, Patricia singled out a successful businessman named Mr. Okiki. She called him to the front of the congregation, dramatically raising her hand as though she were receiving a divine message. "Brother Okiki," she declared, her voice a theatrical whisper, "the Lord is showing me a troubling vision. A dark cloud is surrounding your household. Someone close to you, someone you trust deeply, is working against your blessings." As expected, Mr. Okiki looked alarmed, his eyes wide with shock and fear. "Prophetess, who could it be?" he asked desperately, eager to protect his fortune and his family. Patricia leaned in, lowering her voice to a solemn whisper. "It's your wife. I see her spirit entangled in a web of envy and greed, blocking your breakthroughs." She added, "But fear not, Mama Seidal is here to help you. With my special guidance, I can break this curse." Over time, Patricia convinced Mr. Okiki that his wife's supposed negative energy was the reason for his business struggles. She encouraged him to distance himself emotionally, assuring him that deliverance would come if he followed her instructions. What she didn't tell him was her real motive. She intended to draw him closer to her. Knowing he was vulnerable, she began sending him private messages, inviting him to special prayer sessions at her mansion under the pretext of purging his spirit of his wife's supposed bad influence. These sessions, however, soon took a different turn. Patricia manipulated Mr. Okiki, feeding him flattering words and assuring him of a life filled with blessings if he would satisfy her desires. In no time, Mr. Okiki found himself entangled in an affair with Patricia, convinced that his loyalty to her would bring him divine favor. This pattern repeated with other wealthy men in the congregation. Patricia sowed seeds of doubt between husbands and wives. Elizabeth, the young woman who had been investigating Patricia, grew increasingly disturbed as she learned of these manipulative tactics. This wasn't just spiritual deception. It was a web of lies that destroyed families and tore relationships apart. Patricia's actions were beyond sinful. They were predatory. Another unsettling practice was Patricia's claim that she could bless any jerrycan of water, transforming it into a holy remedy for all problems, illness, financial troubles, and more. For a fee, people would leave their jerrycans of water in her office for prayers. Behind closed doors, Patricia would simply pour a pack of salt and a pack of sugar into each jerrycan. "Now, take this water home and drink from it each day," she would say. The salt and sugar created a slight change in taste, fooling congregants into believing the water was truly blessed. One evening, Elizabeth overheard a conversation between two of Patricia's closest aides, Felix and Linda, discussing the jerrycan trick. "Can you believe they're paying that much just for a dash of salt and sugar?" Linda laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. Elizabeth felt a surge of fear, but she stood her ground, her heart filled with the courage to see her mission through. She knew Patricia's days of deception were numbered. The truth was out there, ready to be revealed, and there was no turning back now. Another fateful night, driven by a mixture of curiosity and courage, Elizabeth decided to follow Patricia. She waited in the bush near the river behind Patricia's mansion, clutching her phone tightly, hoping to capture whatever dark secret lay hidden. The clock struck midnight. Elizabeth saw Patricia emerge from her mansion. She moved gracefully towards the river, her steps almost gliding across the ground. Elizabeth's heart raced as she watched Patricia pause at the riverbank. The prophetess looked up at the sky and began chanting in a strange language, one that sounded ancient and unsettling. Then, before Elizabeth's very eyes, Patricia's form began to change. Her skin shimmered, and scales emerged, covering her body as her legs melded together. Her eyes glowed with a malevolent light. She slid silently into the water, disappearing beneath the surface with a gentle splash. Elizabeth gasped, barely able to process what she had seen. She stumbled back, her mind racing. Patricia was not just a fraud. She was something beyond human, something malevolent. The truth was more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. Patricia wasn't merely deceiving her congregation. She was manipulating them with powers that stemmed from the depths of a dark occultic world. The next morning, Elizabeth returned to the church, her spirit heavy but resolved. She knew now that her mission was not just to reveal Patricia's fraudulent practices, but to expose the dangerous forces she was harnessing. But Patricia, aware of Elizabeth's growing suspicion, had taken notice. Her piercing gaze lingered on Elizabeth during the service, her smile as sharp as a blade. During the altar call that day, Patricia announced that she had a special blessing for one person in the congregation who was called to serve a divine mission. She fixed her gaze on Elizabeth, who froze as Patricia called her forward. "Elizabeth, come forward." Patricia's voice was smooth, but laced with an undertone of menace. "The Lord has shown me that you carry a heavy burden. Come, let Mama Sidal lift it from you." Elizabeth's heart pounded, but she stepped forward, refusing to show her fear. As Patricia laid a cold hand on her forehead, Elizabeth felt a chilling sensation run through her body. She heard Patricia whisper in her ear, "You are treading dangerous waters, my child. Be careful, for some secrets are not meant to be uncovered." Elizabeth swallowed hard, but refused to back down. She would continue her mission, but she now knew the stakes were higher than she had imagined. There was no turning back now. Elizabeth's courage became her guiding light as she continued to gather evidence against Patricia. With every passing day, she uncovered more layers of deception and dark manipulation, which confirmed that Patricia's reach went beyond mere fraud. It was now clear to Elizabeth that her mission was about more than just exposing Patricia's lies. It was about freeing innocent souls bound by Patricia's sinister practices. When Elizabeth finally released her gathered recordings, photos, and testimonies to the media, the world was shocked. Reports spread like wildfire, exposing Patricia's deceitful miracles, staged healings, and occult connections. Congregants who had once revered her now reeled with disbelief, feeling betrayed by the person they once called Mama Sidal. Many wept openly, mourning the years and money they had poured into her ministry, only to realize it had all been a carefully orchestrated illusion. In her final address to the church, Elizabeth spoke to the congregation, offering words of wisdom. "My brothers and sisters, this experience has taught me something crucial. Just because someone calls themselves a prophet or a servant of God doesn't mean they are. We must be discerning and vigilant, seeking the truth beyond appearances. Not every church or prayer house represents God's light, and not everyone who claims to be a pastor is genuine." Elizabeth went on to remind everyone that while Patricia's story had cast a dark shadow, it didn't mean all spiritual leaders were deceivers. There are true servants of God, men and women who work tirelessly in humility and sincerity to bring God's love and truth to his people. They don't ask for wealth or demand strange sacrifices. They simply live in a way that reflects the goodness and mercy of the Almighty. The fall of Mama Sidal was swift and absolute. Holy Ground Ministries was dismantled, its grand hall a hollow monument to a shattered faith. Patricia, her true form exposed, vanished, retreating into the shadowy depths from which she came. She was last seen slipping into the river behind her mansion, the glow of her serpentine eyes a final, terrifying image. But from the ashes of that deception, a new hope began to grow. Elizabeth, once a quiet churchgoer, was now a leader. People flocked to her, not for miracles or prophecies, but for her quiet strength and unwavering commitment to truth. She started a new community, a place of genuine worship and open discussion, where people were encouraged to seek answers for themselves rather than blindly following a single leader. The mirrors of life were collected and destroyed, their dark power broken. The miracle oils and holy water were replaced with honest teachings and simple acts of kindness. Elizabeth's story became a beacon, a cautionary tale that reminded people to look beyond the surface, to question what they were told, and to trust their own hearts. And so, the legacy of Mama See-It-All became an unexpected catalyst for good. It was a painful lesson, but one that ultimately led to a stronger, more discerning faith for many. The world, having witnessed the danger of blind trust, began to demand something more. Not just miracles, but truth. Elizabeth, the quiet woman who had refused to look away, became the symbol of that change.